Mamta. Good to see you. Oh, you're muted. Sorry. We can't hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me
Hello,
now?
hello. Yes, we can. We can. So
How?
great to see you.
Yes. How's everybody doing?
Awesome.
Sarah is there. Premlata, Kirtana, Divya. Okay. All right. How many people do we have attending right now?
We still have a few more to join. I'm expecting them to stream in, so we can take a few minutes.
Yeah. You guys continue talking. I got in the middle of something very interesting, I believe. So let me listen in.
No, we were just chit-chatting, getting to know one another here. We usually start these events with people just sort of sharing where they're from, what they're doing. So we're just doing, these couple of minutes while we wait for others to come in. So I was just asking people as they're joining in to share a note in the chat box about where they're coming from, what they're currently doing.
Speaking of which, how do I put on the chat box? I just go to chat?
Yeah.
So that I can see what people are saying?
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, let me just do that. Okay, now I have it.
Okay, perfect.
I will probably not, people are welcome to write on it, but I will probably not read it till I'm ready for questions.
Yeah.
And Shruti, you're welcome to monitor the questions and read them out to me as well. So
Sure.
Yeah,
that's usually what we do. We take the questions. Sometimes speakers like to take them as they go along, but usually we take them at the end.
Most of the people who like to take them as they go along can either multitask or belong to the 21st century. And there are some of us who get so involved with the teaching, and then it's like, what? And it looks so weird on the thing that we look very tech savvy by you just reading the question and I can answer it. I'm so much into oral teaching anyway, so.
Yeah. And you're a wonderful teacher, so I
don't know about that, but thank you.
Yeah, very inspiring. All right, so we have a few people writing in. So we have Siva Parvati, who's studying at Kerala Ayurveda. She's completed her AWC and she's going to join AWP by end of this year. That's awesome.
Lovely. Is everybody that's here today from Kerala? And are you all AWP or mixed, or what is the demographics here?
It's a mixed group. A lot of people in the community are from Kerala Ayurveda, but several are not. They are coming from other schools as well.
Wonderful.
And then it tends to be a mix of, AWC, AWP, and people who already have, either already have a practice after that or are looking to start a practice. And people from US, Canada usually are here at this time because of the event. But we do have members of the community who are in other countries and will watch the recording later.
This is growing.
Yeah, it has been wonderful actually.
Yes. So do people have, what are you expecting today? I mean, I know what the topic is, but if anybody wants to speak up, if there's something burning that you want to find out about, I'll include that in my presentation.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I'd love to see what people put in the chat. So Dr. Divya says, want to find out how to market.
How to market. Okay. I'll just say this right now too. Are there any other questions or shall we just do that? Okay, want to find out. Actually, just so you know that the California Association of Ayurvedic Medicine, CAM, that I will talk about a little bit later, is going to be doing like a 4-module course to help Ayurveda practitioners market, because we found that they are most of the Ayurveda students are either yoga students or they're just plain society rebels. They want other answers. They want something more than what conventional society has to offer. So you say marketing and it's like, oh, that's so corporate,
evil. That's evil.
All the ideas come out about that. And frankly, I had that experience as a child growing up because my father had to deal with a lot of people that came to sell stuff to him. And I would see, and I just hated salespeople. I hated them like people hate lawyers or whatever else, you know. And I'd go like that's compromising, you know, that's selling yourself, and I would have nothing to do with it. So of course my life turns out to be about sales, right? I ended up doing a farmers I that's a different story, but we were doing farmers markets at one time. I was one of the first people to start doing hummus in Tabbouleh and things like that, and people go, what is that? And because that was not so important as my art and everything, I was just playing with it and explaining to
Right.
them what hummus was and what tabbouleh was. And I got to redefine what sales was. That sales was not a used car salesman. If any of you are there, please excuse me. But it wasn't about being a salesperson who is conning someone, you know, the traditional idea of conning someone to pay money and buy what you have to sell. I realized that really sales is somebody who can communicate and communicate information. And to this day, when I'm talking to people, to clients, I'm never selling Ayurveda. What
Right.
I'm doing is communicating everything I know about Ayurveda, just like I did about hummus,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And it's that communication, that one-on-one or to a group, of really just sharing information. And it's the sharing that creates the marketing. Really, people are so wise to marketing tactics now that by the time you talk about branding and, you know, blah, 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 all the buzzwords, those really came out of people doing genuine selling.
Yeah.
And people always say it's not, people don't, I remember a person once told me, they don't come to do business with you um, or to get your services um, because of your services. Because what you have and what you offer, they can get from anywhere else. Okay. The reason they come to you is because they enjoy the experience of doing business with you, or of
Right.
sharing that time with you, or getting the counseling from you. It's an experience. And really all you're doing is communicating from experience and creating an experience. And that's what you want to do. And you can only create an experience if you're truly sharing, you
Right.
know. And
Right.
that is very yogic. That is not corporate, if you
Right.
know what I mean.
It's sincere. It's from the heart.
And
So
even if you're corporate, they are finding that the biggest resource is the human resource, you know, because you can't supplement that,
right.
you know.
Right. Oh,
So
wonderful.
anyway,
All right.
any
Uh,
other questions or should we start?
there are a few more comments along those lines, and maybe I would say we can get started with the talk for now. I see
Okay.
almost we probably have everybody who is going to join us live. So we could get started, and I can also definitely take some of these questions a little later.
Yeah, I'll do
And
that.
yeah,
I don't know whether to put on my headphones. Are you hearing me okay? Or will you hit, I'm going to do this and tell me if this is better. Do you
sure, sure.
better now, or was it the same?
It's a little bit better now. Yeah, this is great.
Okay,
This
so
is
I look
comfortable.
weird, but you'll hear me better. Okay?
You look
Uh,
great. Thank you. All right. So let's get started. So for some of you who may be joining us for the first time today for a CTA event, very warm welcome to you. We are so lucky today to have Mamta ji here. She's such an inspiring teacher, and I am so thankful you could take the time today and be with us.
yeah.
I'll let you take over so that we have enough time. If
Okay.
we may run over a little bit after 2 p.m., we can continue if you have time, or if the audience is may be able to stay on, but we can see how it goes.
I'm fine staying over. I thought it was going to be an hour and a half, so my misunderstanding. So I'm fine. And if you're recording it, they can listen to it afterwards. But if you all want to run, that's fine too. I have other
All
things.
right.
So we'll
All
we'll
right.
just hang out. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds
Okay.
great.
All right. So bear with me while I share the screen. Yay. Okay. I'm always so relieved with the technical stuff. So to begin with, my name is Mamta Landerman, and I'm going to speak a little bit about my journey in Ayurveda and in Jyotish, and then answer any questions that you might have about um, anything that's within my scope to answer. Okay, so we'll take it from there. So I'm going to take a little bit of time just to talk about my journey to Ayurveda. I was born and raised in Bombay, India, and I came from a pretty modern, kind of a broad-minded family. My background was actually art. I just loved art. I painted, I went to a fine arts college, I did theater, I did acting, I did directing, I loved music. I used to play the flute for 4 hours a day. My whole life revolved around art. And both my parents were into art. And so I grew up doing that. And then, and I loved India, was not looking to move at all. And then I met this guy who came from America. And, a week later he proposed. And on the 11th day we were married. And 2 weeks later, I found myself in America. Talk about culture shock. And then he was a dentist. He has since passed away. And I was into art, and we had 2 kids. And I was very interested always in philosophy, in Indian philosophy and philosophy. And I got into energy healing over here. I was training in that. And then I also got into doing amateur theater here. I was directing a play with the students at Stanford, and we were putting it up in San Francisco. And then I had an accident. I fell from an 8-foot platform on a ladder that wasn't fastened. So I went up, and as I got to the top rung, I said, "Is this tight?" And too late, the ladder fell, and I fell on it. And I hurt my spine in 3 different places, but it was a hairline fracture and couldn't really be seen. And that really is what started me with getting into physical healing. There are different cues that the universe gives you. There was a lady that came who was a Feldenkrais person, and in one session, I hadn't been able to move for 6 weeks. In one session, I was sitting up, and it made a huge difference to me. So I started to get interested in that. I got very interested in Jinshin Jitsu. I was already doing a lot of energy healing, hands-on healing. And the reason I got into Jinshin Jitsu is because, well, let me back up a little bit. One of the things that happened was after my back hurt and everything, I was going, what do I do? And I sat down in meditation, and very clearly I got grow sprouts and flowers. And we always had a garden. I loved gardening. I had never really grown sprouts, but I went out and got sunflower seeds and grew them. I got into the San Rafael Marin market, which had a 2-year waiting list because nobody had sprouts. And at the time I didn't realize, but I started to grow edible flowers. And then my husband, who was fond of gardening, also said, well, as long as you're doing that, I'll grow lettuce. And we started to take it to farmers markets. Um, Also, it prepared us to do farmers market big time, meaning bigger than just a home garden, because he was an alternative dentist, a holistic dentist that eventually got a Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in biological dentistry. And he was totally against mercury fillings, which is very common now, but I'm talking 40 years ago. And the board had gotten, he didn't do root canals, and the board had gotten very wary and had taken away his license, was going to take away his license, and eventually took it away 3 times because he refused to do certain things. And so what we did was we had 2 boys, and we had 4 acres of land, and then he leased some more. And we did farming for 8 years because all of a sudden we were not Mr. Dentist and dentist's wife. We were farmers, and we loved it. We loved meeting people. I saw so many new farmers markets begin, and what was lovely about it was that, normally, and this is different from India, is normally here the lawyers meet the lawyers, the plumber meets the plumber, you make an appointment and you meet somebody. And there was no casual meeting, but at the farmers markets, I would see the people that, had done some work on my house, or somebody had done something else, and we all met, and everybody was under a common umbrella buying zucchini or strawberries or different things. And I would just watch their crown chakras sort of going kind of like R2D2, and just like as all the human beings were mixing on a common ground without just their professional hats on. And it was a lovely, one could just feel that there's a new impulse coming into people as they start going to these community events that are for a common purpose in mankind. So that was really lovely. And we enjoyed that, but it was a lot of hard work. With 2 little kids, it was a lot of hard work. So anyway, at one point I have to stop. I can't do this. I'd done it for 8 years, getting up at 5 in the morning, it would be ice cold. And the weather, if the weather was bad, that means everything that we had made couldn't be sold. And I started to go, please don't rain, please don't rain. And I'm going like, oh my God, I used to love the rain. And now it's winter when it needs to rain. And I'm praying that it doesn't rain so that my stuff can be sold, and I went, this is not right. And I said to my husband, okay, I am done with going to the farmers markets. And I went into meditation, and I went, what are my next steps? And I kind of had a spiritual tantrum. This was the second major time I really sat in meditation to get an answer. And I said, I am so confused. I don't know where to go, what to do, and I need an answer. I need an answer that is clear. I don't want 2 answers because I don't want to have to choose. And I need to know that this is the answer. So without a doubt. And I'm not getting up from this chair till I get that answer. And my husband had gone to work, kids had gone to school. I had all the time in the world. I sat down and I meditated. And in about an hour and a half, very clearly, I got Ayurveda. Now understand, I'm an artist. I was not a gardener. I mean, I was not a healer, but I had learned energy healing and I loved it. I did a lot of aura readings, etc. And I thought, Ayurveda, I can't go back to India to study. My whole family is here. So I went and bought the yoga journal. And in that yoga journal issue was an article that the first Ayurveda college had opened in California. It was the first state certified college. It had just opened in October, and this happened in November. So I called them and they said, we've already started. Why don't you join our April group, the next group? And so I enrolled and I did that. And that's how I got into Ayurveda. Okay. when I went to Ayurveda school, it was really interesting, especially the first part of it, the AWP part. I kind of went, really? They go to college to learn this? Because I didn't grow up thinking of food as high in calories or, protein and carbohydrates. We grew up thinking, no, 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 that's too hot. This is the summer season. Don't eat that. Oh my goodness, that lady is pregnant. Don't eat a papaya. It can cause a miscarriage because it's very heating for the body. So, and then to actually go to a college and learn all these things, I loved it. And then when I did the second part, the practitioner part, one thing that became very clear to me was because I had seen my husband go through these trials with the dental board. And doing those, we were very aware of the whole medical atmosphere in the country and what can happen if you don't follow the line. And yes, he was a dentist, but I was very aware that a lot of the students that had come to the college were alternative minded, and a lot of them came from yoga. And a lot of them are heart people, or they may be very head and heart people. Very few just head people. And their goal was, I want to teach, I want to go into cooking, I want to help people find their doshas, and wow, they can deal with asthma this way, and had no idea that if they went out and said that to the patients as a practice. Now, understand, I was in the second group graduating, so there weren't that many graduates, but I was looking ahead and going, oh my God, these people are all going to be graduating. There'll be more coming in. And if they go around saying this, they can be tried as a felon for practicing medicine without a license. And you're not tried in court, you're tried by the medical board. And you could get up to 20 years imprisonment. And there was a very famous case of this one doctor who was an alternative doctor. He was an MD. And a woman brought her a child who had ADD, and he gave the child herbs, and he started to get better. And then in the summer, he went and spent time with his dad, and his dad took him to the local doctor in Oregon. And the doctor said, he has ADD, why is he not on Ritalin? He said, well, he's with his mother, and the mother took him to some doctor that's giving him some herbs. So that guy from Oregon reported this person to the medical board. He was fined $90,000. He lost his license. I don't believe he went to jail, but they pretty much, did what they could to ruin him. So there were stories like this that were commonplace for me. And most people going through the college were like, yay, Ayurveda, we're going to help the world, we're going to save the world, we're going to do all of this. And so I would have conversations with the head of CCA of the California College of Ayurveda, Mark Halpern, who's a chiropractor by training. And he was very aware also. And so we kept talking, and we decided soon after I graduated that we would form an association so that there would be professional representation. Because alone, an Ayurveda practitioner would be quite lost. And so we said we'll form, and we invited some of the other people. In fact, my husband decided to join the Ayurveda college. And Mark had asked me to come and teach there right after I graduated, because according to him, it was like he felt he had a co-teacher going through class. Because things, because I'd come from the culture, maybe, things then he would present as a concept. If people didn't understand and I would say it in some other words, they would follow it. And it was very sweet of him to acknowledge that. And he invited me to come and teach. So I became a teacher there. And I also started we started the California Association of Ayurvedic Medicine, which is called CAM. We spent 2 or 3 years um, putting forth, creating bylaws, learning what all this paperwork is about, and then decided we'd open it up for membership. And we opened it up and did the first conference, Ayurveda conference, that ever took place in America. And it was really great. We had about 450 people. It was the largest gathering to date of Ayurveda practitioners, but it's the first time that people that were practicing alone came together. Students from one institution met students of another institution. So then this one said, oh, I learned this on there. Oh, wow, I should take a class from them. And this one said, I should take a class from them. And so it started an intermingling. And it also brought people together, practitioners that met and said, why don't we start a school? And then other institutions came up. In fact, Kerala came up like that. And well, no, I take that back, but it wasn't Kerala at that time. But that lady was teaching at Kerala Ayurveda, Dr. J. Apte. She was teaching at California College of Ayurveda, excuse me. And then she started Ayurveda Institute of America here in Foster City, and later sold it to Kerala Ayurveda. So we started CAM, and we had very successful. We did 3 conferences, international conferences. We held them at UC Berkeley. And we had Dr. Swoboda, Dr. Frawley, David Simon, who used to be at the Chopra Center at the time, and Dr. John Duyad as our keynote. Right after that, the next time we had Maya Tiwari, and we had Bhagwan Das, who's written, and Sharma, who have both written the Charaka Samhita volumes. We invited them from India. So we had really a wonderful time. Vendors came, and for the first time they met practitioners. Otherwise they had to solicit somebody, or someone found out so-and-so is an herbalist, I can get herbs from them through word of mouth. But suddenly there was a place where this could happen. And about 6 months into CAM, we also found out that I don't want to really take names here, but there was a certain doctor that was being challenged in California, although he was not from California. So a lot of his community and students had come to have a meeting to see how they could support him. And they said, why don't we form a group and a political group? And we went to that meeting and told them that CAM is already there, and that, rather than forming 2, why don't you form a national group, because you all aren't originally from the state, and we'll work together. And that's how NAMA came about. For those of you who may or may not know NAMA, the National Association of Ayurvedic Medicine. At the time, they dwindled it down to 4 people because, it takes time to plan, and you need agreement, and you need a know-how. And so they stayed 4 for a while. And then at the CAM conference, which happened about 3 years after our founding, they had their first in-person meeting and recruited volunteers and recruited other people to start working in NAMA. Meanwhile, as all things happen and as the world revolves, there is dark and night and dark and night. And so things in CAM became very political. And they became more and more political. But one of the things we did succeed in doing is we joined forces with the Homeopathic Association. And the person over there there's a lady in Minnesota who had done something called the Health Freedom Act. And then this homeopath here wanted to bring it, also do that in California. And we joined together, and then we got massage therapists. He was the main person, but Ayurveda CAM played a very big part in it because we had good membership. And we went to the legislature and presented, and were very active in getting Senate Bill 577 passed. And what that allowed was that now alternative practitioners could actually see clients and work within their scope of practice. The only binding was you cannot treat a disease, that, and you cannot treat what they call Western disease. I don't know why disease should be Eastern or Western. Everybody gets diabetes, everybody gets asthma, but they call it Western disease because they call it Western science. It's allopathy. And so to this day, you can't really treat a disease. But before, if you did anything, you could be tried for medicine without a license. Now the doctors had to prove that what you did was harmful. And as long as there is no intentional harm done, where you intentionally didn't do something, you're okay, you know. So that was a huge milestone for us. And about 5 years into it now, when you're bringing something into being, you have to use a certain Shakti, you have to call on a Shakti. And I think I could not have done CAM if the time wasn't right. I think Ayurveda's time had come. And, uh, and so, you know, it started a lot of different businesses. People started spas, people started massage, people started herbal things, people started schools, colleges, clinics. So it was really wonderful. But by about 5 years into it, I was exhausted. During the conferences, I would be working about, you know, anywhere from 12 to 18 hours a day on it. And I was running my own clinic after graduation, where I would sometimes do 2 to 3 panchakarmas a day. I had a very successful Ayurveda practice. And after the first conference in 2001, um, in June, I was actually going to take a pulse class from Dr. Lad, and I was on the airport bus when my assistant called me and said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm on the airporter and I'm going, you know what I'm doing." She said, "You better get down at the next stop." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "The clinic is on fire." And I'm going, okay. And so I got done. Luckily, the next bus stop was very close, and they came and picked me up, and we went. And I was in the middle of a panchakarma. This last session of this person was left, and she was going to do it. And my patients were there standing outside watching the building burn. The assistant were there, and the lady who was going to help with the massage, who's a very dear friend of mine, was also there. And we actually, while the fire was burning, because she had also graduated from what do you call it, from CCA with me, she had all the equipment and everything at her home. So actually she, my assistant, and the two patients, the two people went and got, they were a couple, and they got their panchakarma finished. I went there just a little bit later after handling with the fire department and all of that, and did a little, made sure they were okay. And it was like without a beat. And there was a room available in Sebastopol, which was a nearby town. And I quickly took that and continued while this building was being rebuilt. So it was interesting. And John Duyard heard about the fire and wrote to me because he'd had his clinic burned. And he said, you know, when there's a disaster, it's very sad, but it's a catastrophe. But when it is through fire, it's a purification. And I felt people would meet me and go, "I'm so sorry, I heard your clinic burned down." I go, "Yeah, but I feel like it burned open something." And I think that when I look back, you know, I had done so much energy work. So I was tuning in to some other things. And it was like a preparation for me to get the cues to the next level. I wasn't like sitting, "Oh my God, I had the most horrible thing happen." It was like, I don't know if you know about this, but in California, there's a particular pine tree. And it has pine cones, and those pine cones have pine seeds. And the only way those are released is when there is a forest fire. And when the forest fire, it takes the heat of a forest fire to break open the shell of the pine cone and and then they distribute, and new life and new pine trees are born out of it. And I felt like that was what was happening. Now, there was a part of me that was going on automatically. Part of it is when you have something like that, you don't account for the shock, because on the one hand you're talking with the fire department, and on the other hand you're looking at the patients, and then you're thinking about rent, and you're thinking about all the mundane little things. But that's also because you become hyper attentive with the shock of it. And so my first thing was, gosh, I've got this successful thing. Let me just take another place and start doing it. But actually, it was time for me to go beyond that. And it was that very year that I was actually in my home, and I suddenly felt like a ray of light just come in. It was like a white light, like a white beam. And I just kind of going, what? And then I felt a red light come in, and with it, a sort of in my mind's words saying, that is Mars, and that is Saturn. Now, Saturn is not really considered white, but that's what I got. And I'm going, what? Jyotish now? I mean, I'm already doing Ayurveda, and I had not had good experiences with Jyotish. So I was not really looking to do Jyotish, although I love all the Vedic sciences. I was not looking to that. But I did have a book on Jyotish, and it was written by Hart Defoe, who was the teacher for Dr. Swoboda, and I knew Dr. Swoboda, and I had a great respect for him. I thought, boy, his teacher, that should be good. And it turned out I got an email out of the blue. I don't even know how I got that email, because I didn't know the person, but I got a message somehow that Hart was coming to California, to San Rafael, which is like 45 minutes from where I lived, to do courses in Jyotish. And I joined it. And when I first joined Ayurveda, I went, everything I've done has been so that I could find Ayurveda. It all came together. Now Marma is getting popular, but Jinshin Jitsu, which is a Japanese form of acupressure, just dealt with all the 5 elements and the points on the body, and how the subtle body connects to the gross body and vibrates back out, and all of that, and the energy work, the talking about the astral body, and then learning about the subtle body in Ayurveda. It all started to come together in Ayurveda for me. And finally, when I went to Jyotish, it tied the individual to the universe. And I went, oh my God, all of this was so I could find Jyotish. So long story short, what has happened is I have continued teaching Ayurveda. One of the things that happened to me was, after the 3 conferences, I had worked so hard, and it had become political, and I was becoming an expert in second guessing what the next moves would be. And I said, do I really want to become an expert in this? And I felt it was time for me to go. That was my job, to sow the seed so Ayurveda could actually take root in a different way. And what people brought forth was their individual journey and their transformation. And it would be in the transformation of the individual that the transformation of the collective would happen, and Ayurveda would come to America with a new impulse, because it can't be practiced here like it is in India. It's a different culture, it's a different time. In Ayurveda, you learn Kal, Des, Patra. That means Kal means time, Des is locality, and Patra is the individual. that is activated in time and space, locality. And so the American thinks differently. In America, they'll pay you for an hour of consultation and go back finding out, wow, turmeric is like this and ginger is like this. And in India, you just have to say, just be sure that you cut down on tomatoes, and because they all know what everybody's eating in the locality, or eat little less salt, and have turmeric in the milk. And they all know what that means. You don't spend much time. Not to mention that each practitioner sees 50, 60 people a day over there because the population is so great. Whereas over here, you're lucky if you see 8 people and have a full practice. So it's a completely different way that Ayurveda is practiced here and needs to grow. But it's not and should not come the way it is practiced in India. Because in India, frankly, just like Ayurveda and yoga came here, Western medicine went to India. So the Ayurveda practitioner is trained in both allopathy and Ayurveda. And it's really great on one hand because they're very good at building bridges between the two to talk the language of communication between the two. What is not nice is that they tend to practice Ayurveda very allopathically there. There are very few that really do the mind-body consultation. You come there, they listen to your pulses, they'll decide whatever disease you have, they'll recommend certain herbs. On your way out, you pick up those herbs and you're gone. And it's like a 10-minute consultation, very much like MDs over here. So what's going to happen is, as the counseling levels get much more sophisticated, are sophisticated. Each of you has more sophistication about counseling. And as it grows and matures, it will go back to India because it will be fertilized by a different set of mental capacity and minds, so that just like yoga, it was practiced just by the renunciates for the most part in India, and a few people who were philosophically intellectual and got into yoga. But it took coming here, it took Cary Grant looking so young and finding out, oh my God, for the last 20 years he's been doing yoga. It took Swami Vivekananda to come and talk about Indian philosophy. He was given 3 minutes to talk at the interreligious meeting. Nobody had heard about Indian philosophy, and they said, what do you want to, so he came up and he said, well, what do you want me to talk about? And one bright guy said, well, how about zero? Well, they wouldn't let him stop talking once he started to talk. And he talked for 3 days. And that's when the word went around and the people got interested, and it started to come to America, Indian philosophy. And then yoga came, and now Ayurveda is coming. Okay. So do we have so many questions so far? I don't even know how to look at the chat box now because I see everybody here. It's not showing me where the chat is.
It should be in the bottom
I'm
of your
seeing the
screen.
band, and I saw the chat before, but now it's not showing that. So
if you just hover there aren't actually any new questions
there
right
aren't any.
now.
Okay, yeah. Fine. So then I'll just continue, and then if things come up, we can do it. My God, it's 1:43. How much have I been talking?
We have some questions that were posted earlier in the chat. So whenever you're ready, we can.
Okay. So I've told you basically both of these things. One thing I do want to say from a personal experience is that in 2008, my husband had a stroke. And so I kind of stopped my practice. I continued teaching, and I really have never started the practice again, although I do give consultations when people seek me out. But otherwise, I spend mostly my time teaching Ayurveda and Jyotish. And the main thing I want to conclude with this is one of the things I've realized is that um, we learn Ayurveda theoretically, and we learn, for example, digestion and the seven dhatus, and how digestion takes 30 days, 35 days, and then there's ojas created, etc. But what we don't always realize is that once you get into Ayurveda, all Vedas are a living wisdom, and it lives. You never jump into the same river of knowledge twice because you're in a different place of life experience. And really, Ayurveda is about making it a way of your life, but also realizing that it's a journey of building the different tissues of Ayurveda in your practice. So in the beginning, you'll have this enthusiasm, a little, and apprehensive. You're going to build a practice, and it's that rasa dhatu. What is the flavor I want to create? All the enthusiasm is there, the naivety is there, the innocence is there, and then you have to hunker down, and you go through a certain fire, and with that fire you start to feed and develop the passion, which is the sar of the rakta dhatu. You've learned that. And you create the vitality and the energy of how to sustain what was just in the rasa, the preliminary flavors of the profession. You start to hunker down and you go deeper, and then you create the confidence, and you're creating the mamsa dhatu. But the confidence comes through trial and error, and digestion and indigestion and exercise, and getting all of those things in your practice as a practitioner on how you learn to sustain. So Ayurveda is not an intellectual certification that you've gotten from a school. That's just a beginning part of it. It's really a journey that you're taking. Okay? And I am going to speak a little bit about Jyotish because Shruti said people don't really always know about Jyotish and they would like to know some more. So I will spend a little time on that. But first, let's take a couple of questions. So Shruti, I can't find the question. Do you mind
Sure,
reading it?
sure, absolutely. So one question that I think you already took that, so I'll go to the next one.
Yeah.
Deepa Chandur asks, for someone new, what are the first steps?
Okay. So when you say somebody new, Deepa, are you meaning somebody new to Ayurveda, or are you saying somebody just graduated? Can you clarify that, please? And
Graduated.
graduated from AWP or from AWC or AP?
She's asking both.
Okay. I am of the firm belief that if you want to take up Ayurveda as a profession, as a practitioner, that you really need to do everything in your power to take the Ayurveda practitioner program. It's, even though technically the skill and the scope is that of a lifestyle and nutrition counselor, even when you become a practitioner, it's like your AWP is AWC, whatever it's called here, AWC is here, and AWP begins here. It's, you get another depth of information which you need if you're going to be treating people. You'll be amazed more and more as Ayurveda gets popular. People will come to you, and it's very humbling. They would come to me saying, well, I went to all the doctors, and I went to the naturopath, and I went to the homeopath, and blah, 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 blah. So I'm coming to you now, and what's wrong with you? And they'd have some terminal disease. And you're going like, you have to remember that you did the first year, and you did 1 weekend a month for 11 months. So that's how many days? That's 22 days. And they're coming to you and choosing you when there are doctors who have spent 5 years minimum plus apprenticeship, internship, working with another doctor, and then going into private practice. And so it makes the doctors upset that how well are you trained? Do you even know what the diseases are? Do you know what medicines I've given? Do you know what are the interactive levels? So it's really your responsibility to go into and to keep learning. And any profession, health profession, is a lifelong learning. All doctors, all naturopaths, all acupuncturists, all of them have to take continuing education units because science is changing and you have to keep learning and keeping abreast. You as an Ayurveda practitioner also need to keep yourself informed with all these so you can talk to doctors. So I would recommend that if you are an AWP, that you look at AWC, that you a counselor, you look at being a practitioner. However, having said that, some of you may need to take a break because there are financial challenges, or children are too young, or you're doing something else as well, you're training somewhere else. And if that is the case, then the first things to find out is you need to answer some questions. How many hours a week can you put into your practice? What is that going to entail? Where are you going to practice? You can practice at your home, or you can take up a room. The problem with practicing at home is you want to be very careful who you're inviting. And also, you have to get a business license, and some places don't allow for businesses at home, especially if people are coming or neighbors can complain. Luckily for Ayurveda, you're seeing a patient maybe an hour at a time, or if they're doing panchakarma, longer than that. Of course, if you're doing panchakarma and you're doing massage, you have to be very, very careful you're not doing it out of your house unless you have a license for it. Massage needs license, and you also need business license because unfortunately there are a lot of prostitutes that under the cover of massage license practice prostitution. And so the police are extremely vigilant about people practicing at home. And so that's to be very careful about. The other thing is make sure that you have people that you can refer to, make sure that you have more senior practitioners when you're first starting out as mentors, people that you can call. I think Kerala has a mentorship program, but if not, if you know practitioners, ask them if they would be willing to mentor you. You might, you could do it different ways. If you have a difficult one, you could contact them and ask them if they could help you. Or you could, some people do mentoring at a regular, on a regular basis, or you decide, what, once in 2 weeks I'll take all my cases, or once a week and spend half an hour or 1 hour with all these different things and get more certain. Because then you can ask questions, why are you saying we should do this instead of this? And you'll get perspective. Just know that in all of the other health professions, after graduating, they all do apprenticeships. There'll be a junior doctor and a senior doctor, and the junior doctor will follow them around and listen and stay in and get. And then you start thinking, well, I would give them the shmool. And then you hear the doctor say, well, you need to take the shmool. And you go, and then you come to a point where your confidence goes up and you go, 9 times out of 10, I'm on the same par. Or if it's different, you have a chance to say, well, could I have done this instead? And they'll tell you, yeah, but this will affect this. So you have little brainstorming things, and you build your self-esteem, your self-confidence that way, and your life experience. You need that. This is somebody's life that they're coming with to you. Okay, so I would recommend those would be some of the steps. In my case, I'm always the fool. I like go with my intuition, and it seems to have carried me or protected me. I had a friend who said, "Why don't you practice at my house? I'm gone all day and I'm going to see patients in the day." So she would be gone in the day. She had a very nice place in a room that I converted into a practice place, and that's how I started. After that, I moved. Actually, when I moved my home, I moved to a place where people would come to my house, and then when there were enough, I took up a room in a massage place, and that's where I did panchakarma, etc. I also had the advantage that my husband, although he was a dentist, he was a biological dentist, and he had learned acupuncture, homeopathy, and trained with a German physician. And to this day, I had never met a person who was greater in pathology than him. So I had the advantage of calling him and saying, this is what this is happening. What do you think? And he would say, well, if that's what's happening, remember to also check and see the liver, okay? I mean, make sure what's happening with the liver, because that's connected to this. And that helped me a lot. And then when he took up Ayurveda, we sort of became each other's consultants. So he would call me up and say, hey, so-and-so's come with this. What does Ayurveda have to say about it? And we'd put perspective on each other. So that's how I started. And I did advertise, once I moved out of my home part, I advertised, actually, even before I moved out. That's how I got patients. There are local community magazines. So there's a very famous one in the Bay Area called Common Ground, and there was one called Share Guide in my own local area. And I got most of my patients from there. It was a little column I would put, and once in a while I'd write an article for them. And just know that every time you make an appearance, people will come, and there'll be two, three that'll contact you from there. And that's how I grew my practice. It was completely word of mouth, really, more than anything else. I took my time because I had to build my confidence. And the other strange thing was, when I started out, I thought, well, I don't know whether I'll be able to do it properly, so I'll charge $35. And so I would charge $35. Now this is in 2000, 2000. Yeah, it was 2000, 1998. But I would charge $35, and, they would come, and then my husband said to me, you've invested more in this and you need to charge more. And I changed it to 75. And the minute I did that, it's like my status in their eyes went up. And eventually I went to 150. Actually, I went to 200 for consultations. I wouldn't charge too much for herbs. And there's such a thing as, if you're working below your value, people don't value you either. But one thing that both my husband and I did was, we never turned someone away for lack of funds. So if people were not able to pay, they were really genuine. And I still do, I will give them, what is it called? Basically a discount. But if there are people that can't afford it, that doesn't stop me from giving them an Ayurveda consultation. That's about health. Jyotish, I don't always do that, because Jyotish, I need a lot of other time to prepare, and I don't always have that much time. But it's always on a case basis. People matter first. So,
Right.
any
Wonderful.
other questions?
Yeah, on a related note, Julia asked, what are the key steps you think we should make in order to protect ourselves and our practice from lawsuits and similar risks? I think this is a question that a lot of us have, so it would be great to hear your thoughts on this.
So, there is, first of all, before you graduate, I'm sure that your schools will give you certain forms. I know that CCA did, and I think Kerala does too. So there are intake forms. I always have them sign. Here's what it is. Senate Bill 577 requires a couple of things that you have to disclose. You've got to disclose what your education is, what the philosophy of the education is. So something simple like, this is a mind-body healthcare that believes in, natural modalities, that we do not treat disease. I have it in my form. I say, I do not treat disease. If you are suffering from any kind of a disease, we recommend you see a doctor. It's right there. They sign it. Okay. And I let them know that I graduated from so and so. If you want to put how long ago, you can put that. So you need to know your education. You need to not treat disease. You need to let them know you don't treat disease. What you are treating is wellness. Now, you have to be very careful, because especially as you go through the practitioner program, you start feeling, oh yeah, asthma this and blah, 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 that and all of that. And we start to become wannabe doctors. Okay. Oh, why give Tylenol? I could give this for headache and blah, blah. We go through that. But your scope of practice is to treat wellness. And I tell you, if you stick to your scope of practice, do you know how many people would benefit from that? Right now, we have COVID going on. And the main thing that people are realizing is what you need is an immune system. You need ojas, and they don't know how to build ojas. They don't realize that having hot water before it's first thing in the morning or at night, or having golden milk, can build your system up. And it is so needed. If you just stick with educating the people, they're not yet ready to take all the minerals and all those therapies from India at this point. But what they can get within the scope of what is allowed right now would heal the whole society. If they start to live in rhythm and you start to practice what you've taught, even as an Ayurveda practitioner, as an AP, you're still practicing AC. It's just that you are much more deeply informed with what is going on with the person, which you have no idea about in AWC. Okay? So I would say you have them, you do that. Secondly, it's very important that you don't do wink, wink. I'm not really treating asthma. I'm giving you these herbs for lungs. There's no wink, wink. You will be surprised. They will come looking like hippies disguised once Ayurveda gets more known. You always want to be thinking that the client, if the client had a recording of what you were saying and had to turn it over to the authorities, would you be safe? And that's a way of self-training, because you let your guard down once you get to know the patients and they become friends. Okay, you always, but it's not so that you don't get caught. You want to be thinking holistically. If that person has come to you with asthma, you need to look at them as a whole person who has a little, clunking happening in the lungs. There's something happening in the lungs, but you have to think of them as a whole being. And how can you put the wellness back in the person? If you're thinking wellness, maybe the Dashmul will help to do this. Maybe Triphala will help to do this, but you're thinking wellness. When you hold that person in their wholeness, something shifts within them. Most doctors are only looking at illness and feeding the illness. They may not have had anybody who looks upon them as a whole. And just being in consultation with you, they might go off feeling better because suddenly they're presencing their light instead of what's not working.
Right. Great.
Any other?
Yeah. Another question is around pricing. So the question is, have you ever tried to use packages to offer clients? It looks like a great deal of work goes in the beginning, plus we need to make sure that clients stay with us as Ayurvedic methods take time to work. Hence, I wonder if providing packages for 3 months would be a good idea. It would include initial consultations and then various follow-ups.
I think Kerala offers that, and there are many people who offer that. And yes, it's a good idea. Look, there is Ayurveda, the practice, and then there is working on the profession. How do you get clients? How do you maintain clients? How do you keep it? Now, people sometimes work out of shortage, scarcity, like there aren't enough people, But how often do you go to a doctor? Not because you don't believe in a doctor, but how often do people go to a doctor? They go for an annual checkup. Okay. And then if something is wrong, they'll maybe go for 1 or 2 or 3 follow-up visits. So you want to build your practice with, how do I constantly get new people? And you have to build your practice where you're getting new people for at least 3 months. Then the first people will return. Now, you can also, because part of your practice is education, that you can create packages. The packages have to be like, look, you can, depending on why they've come, if they've come for a common cold or they had fever and it's going to go away, you may need them to come one more time and then say, and now we're going to do some lifestyle counseling. You can have packages where you say, look, you've had this for 6 years and it's going to take 6 months at least. Now, I'm not treating disease, for you to feel strong. So what I'm going to suggest is that right now I need to see you more often, because if you do what we need to plan today, in the next week, I'm going to give you more therapies, but I don't want to burden you with everything right now. You need to strengthen one, then we'll do the next and the next. And so for 4 weeks, I'll need you to come in once a week. Or if they live very far, we need to schedule a phone call where I can check in on you and recommend the next therapy. And then after that, I'll need to see you in 3 weeks, and then 2 times, and then you take it depending on what it is, once a month for 2 months, and then I won't see you for 6 months. After that, I'd like to see you after 6 months. And I think that that's what it's going to take to do this. So you can create individual packages, you can create other packages. That's all part of your marketing and what you want to do. The main, you also want to know that people don't have, unless they're really well to do, they either don't have the money, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the follow through. So how are you going to support them? The ones that don't have the money, how are you going to support them? Maybe you have some joint classes that you do where all these people can come and learn. They pay, instead of paying your hourly rate, you have 5 people that come and you explain diet to all of them at one time. So you work with the situations, but those are the challenges that are going to come up. The ones that are really, the problem is right at the beginning, we're always applying our theories. So somebody is very vated out, and the first thing you do is you say, well, you've got to eat time regularly, and you've got to eat at this time. Regularity for a vata is like asking the air to blow at the same level all the time. It don't work. It doesn't happen. That's a rule that is made by a pitta. So the vata person is this delicate person whose energy comes up and down and moves in gusts. And so you want to give them a little thing. Say, I'm going to give you something while your herbs are coming. It's a single practice, but if you do that, you'll see a difference. Can you trust me with that? Yeah. Okay. What I want you to do is all week drink hot water. And that's it. And believe me, and this is when I was charging enough, people would do it. And they would go, oh my God, it changed my life. Okay. So it's, in the beginning, you are going to, just like a person learning ABC, they have to think the line goes up, then the line comes down, then I cross it. But really, what really happens is now you just write A when you have to write A, right? So in the beginning, you have to think about these things. But the main thing, main aptitude is to listen. There are people who'll go, oh, this one's vata, this one's pitta, this one's kapha. Oh, what do they say? Oh, I'm too vata, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm too pitta, I'm sorry. This is all nonsense. You don't talk like that. when you talk in India, if somebody goes to see a Vaidya and comes back and go to the Vaidya, so they say, I have too much vata. I have vata, not I am vata. We all have vata, pitta, kapha. If any one of them was not there, you wouldn't be here. But when we start boxing things, then you stop discovering. When a client comes to see me, my mind is blank. I don't even I tell them, you bring your case with you, bring your forms all filled out with you. I don't send it to me beforehand, because I want to meet who's walking through my door, and how does vata show up in this person, and how does pitta show up in this person, and how does kapha show up in this person. I want to discover that. And then I'll do tongue diagnosis and pulse and their history and take all of that. But the first one I want to meet is not the disease. I want to meet the person. Okay? All right. Next.
Wonderful. This is a question
We're
from.
so over time, by the way. I'm sorry, guys. Okay.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much for staying and answering questions.
Sure.
This is a question from Heather Van Dam.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Hi.
passionate about Ayurveda as well as fitness, and I'm finding my way balancing both professionally. I would like to merge the two moving forward. Any thoughts on organically merging this knowledge for clients slash marketing? And I just want to add a little bit from my side here. I think we have a lot of people who do have this sort of existing practice, whether it's in nutrition, whether it's in fitness, it may be in body work, and they're looking to sort of incorporate Ayurveda into that practice. So I think it'll be great to hear your thoughts on how to address that.
So, I'm presuming that you went into fitness before you went into Ayurveda. And you're working with Americans that are into fitness, okay? Now, the idea of beauty, even in India now, is changing, but the idea of beauty before was that a woman that was more rounded was considered more sexy. If you look at all the temple carvings, that's how they are. And it's different over here. So just look at your own journey. Look at your journey. You're a fitness person and Ayurveda appeals to you. What appeals about Ayurveda most to you? That's how you're going to bridge that. So if you did fitness and you learned Ayurveda and you learned that, right after exercise, your system is hot and you do not drink water right away, or you learned you need to stop when your brow breaks into a sweat, is when the exercise is affecting you at its maximum. Beyond that, you're stressing your system. Okay. So now to consult the A type of exercise, people that like to jog, the pittas that like to jog at noon outside and go for 8-mile jogs. Now you want to use Ayurveda principles in those fitness exercises and tell them that what's really important, first of all, do some stretching. You need to decompress after that. You teach them how to breathe. You teach them yogic stuff. You start to teach them nutrition, and also let them know that what you've got to be aware of is if your bodybuilding and your muscles are tight, muscles the way they are is one thread. What are they called? Anyway, fibers. Muscles are made out of fibers, and if you open one fiber, if you cut it, you'll see there are many more fibers in there, and you cut that, there's more fibers in there, and then there are strands. And your prana, the life force and the nutrition has to go through that. And what happens when you're doing an extreme form of exercise is that your body locks into that pattern. When it locks into that pattern, your breath locks into that pattern, your thoughts locked into those patterns. If I am sitting like this, and I'm sitting in this pattern, then I'm not going to say, even my voice changed and my excitement is not there. I can't say, oh, that is so thrilling. Yeah. It doesn't go like that. What you do is you go, wow, or you get it, aha, and your whole system goes that way. So when we're scared or when we're startled, we go and see everything is frozen. So same way, when you're doing repetitive exercises and you're building muscles, that's one thing. But moderation is what you learn with Ayurveda, and you will have to learn it before you can teach it to anybody and see what kind of transformation it makes. You'll find you may not be as set in your ways, as opinionated in your ways, and it's just coming from changing your diet, because or creating that communication between Ayurveda and fitness. So fitness is not bad, but using Ayurveda principles to fitness, you can apply it that way and make it work. And the same thing with everything else. When I did Jinshin Jitsu, my knowledge in Jinshin Jitsu made me understand Ayurveda and more. And my knowledge of Ayurveda threw a whole different perspective on Jinshin Jitsu. Whatever is your skill, if you're a mathematician, if you're a tech person, if you're a business management person, if you're a counselor, whatever is your skill, you will glean an insight into Ayurveda through that skill. It will not be wasted. Okay? In fact, you will bring a perspective to it. The only thing you want to be careful is that you don't bastardize the universal principles that are lifelong principles of Ayurveda. Then you end up with people who have all these new yogas, and you end up with, hot yoga and all these different things that they're using. What it is the personality is not allowing that vidya, that knowledge, to come in. They're taking that knowledge and imposing their personality on that. And, so it's a fine dance. And as long as you're in the truth of it, remember, the human being is evolving, and there are universal principles and they're applied individually. So you don't change the universal principles, but the expression of how you apply it individually will really depend on your own creative expression. Okay?
Wonderful. Next question is from Catherine Malloy. I'm curious about professional memberships. For example, I live in Canada and I could be a member of AAPNA, Association of Ayurvedic Professionals of North America, or NAMA, or Ayurvedic Association of Canada, or Canadian Ayurvedic Membership Association. It's all rather confusing of what is the best choice for all. What will be the best choice in terms of credibility and ongoing education?
Okay. Ongoing education, none of them are a barrier. You can go and join, you can get education through NAMA, you can get education through APNA, you can get education at some point from CAM. What's happened with, I just want to deviate for a second and I'll come back to your question. After I left CAM, other people took over and it went through certain growth, and then it became inactive, and I was invited 2 years ago to come back and reactivate it. So it wasn't that they were fully inactive, but it wasn't, it had sort of flattened out completely. So I did come back, and we have a new board, and we're reviving CAM. And you should be, in fact, our first announcement went out yesterday, which you might want to attend. It's on the 18th. And what is it going to do? It's going to be addressing legalities of doing online consultations, and also what things you need to do, Zoom consultations and things like that, how to go about doing it. And all of the different people are giving different things, but we thought we wanted to have, it's called Chai with CAM, and you're all welcome to join that. I would recommend that you join, if you're from Canada, I would recommend that you join the Canadian group. And which of them, there are two, I'm actually not familiar with their specialties, but I would call both of them and ask them, what are you offering to practitioners? What are your mission and goals? And talk to them and see what a feel you get for that, and then join accordingly. I would encourage all of you, because you are from different parts of the country, to see if there is a state organization in your state, and to definitely become a part of that. And why do I say that? I say that because if we go for licensing, which we hope to at some point, the national organization will support us, but they can't get the licensing, it's the state. And so the state will be setting the guidelines. Also, everything about this is in a formative space. I want to encourage all of you to volunteer and get involved and get informed. You probably spend 3 to 5 hours, if you can spare that, give back to the profession and help shape it. We all need your help. Same thing with NAMA and APNA. Now, NAMA is the National Association. APNA is, even though people think of either or, they're actually quite different. There are a lot of BA, MS people that join APNA, and NAMA is more about people who are educated here, as well as some BA, MS people. NAMA is setting certain standards for the profession. It's also looking at standardizing education for the profession nationally. CAM is supporting NAMA. We're not against APNA. We just have not yet established a relationship, but we work with NAMA, full disclosure. So, I'm part of their legal committee. We just signed a memorandum of agreement to say that, we'll support each other, and we believe in our goals. So that's what I would do. In fact, I don't have NAMAs, but I just want to, this is CAM's. If you want to get in touch with CAM, this is the website. Our website is still being built. This is my contact information and my website. My website still is also, it's there, but I need to touch it up. But anyway, it's there if you want to contact me. I don't know that we have time to do Jyotish. Maybe we should do it at another time. Shruti, what is your feeling? Because it's already 2:21 and I can just answer some questions and leave it at that. Or
yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. If you guys are interested in learning a little bit about Jyotish or getting an idea of how Ayurveda can work interactively with Jyotish, please let Shruti know. And you can also contact me. I do give classes in Jyotish, beginning from scratch. So
wonderful.
Lovely
Yeah.
to have you guys to do that. So do you have any other questions, or shall we call it a day?
I do, actually.
Okay, I'm here, sweetheart. Okay.
So the next one is from Shagun. Mamta ji,
Hey,
how does legal liability work if you did online consultations based in California where there is health freedom, but want to serve someone who is in a state where there is no Health Freedom Act? Is the liability dependent on where the work is done from?
So, excellent question. I would suggest you come to that webinar, because Susan, the attorney, is going to be answering just that. Okay? And I'd rather you got that answer from Susan. The other thing is, how does the liability now? One of the things that CAM has done is we have negotiated with an insurance company that is going to be offering malpractice insurance on a whole other level than what people have been able to do so far. Plus, if you have an additional license, like massage license, normally you have to get massage insurance. You can get massage insurance from them for $25 instead of paying $100 or $125, whatever it is, an extra for it. They allow you to give herbs. They allow you, if you are practicing, as long as it's legal in the other state, you can do that. The online consultation, actually, I'm going to bring up with them to see if they cover that. But you can go to another state and practice Ayurveda, and their insurance will cover you. Wherever you go, their insurance will cover you. That's what we have gotten from them. This COVID thing came up. We've been negotiating with them for 2 years. So now with the online consultations, we're going to have to bring that up as well. But I don't have an answer to that from the insurance part. And it is very strict. Shagun, just so you know, you're right in answering that question, because now with the internet happening cross state, the states that don't have the health freedom, or the states, if you're selling herbs and things to people that are out of state, you still have to pay their taxes. So it is much more complicated than meets the eye. And you're right in asking about it, and need to get the proper advice for it.
Great. And what is the webinar? Could we maybe even after this session, if you could share the details with me, I'll be happy to post it in the community. So whoever wants
Thank
to attend.
you. I will do that. I'll forward you that email, and then can you forward it to the people?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I'm being a bad president of CAM. I should have had it here, but I have I have how to contact CAM, but I didn't bring the webinar, and I'm not savvy enough to just go there and look for it and give it to you right now. So I'll send it right after we end.
Sure, sure, sure. That'll be great. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
So are we questioned out?
I think we can do one last one,
Okay.
which is just a quick follow-up to, I think, when you were talking about the disclosure statement earlier, the
Yes.
waiver rather.
Yeah.
So Deepa was asking, when we suggest certain herbs, are we still within the disclosure statement scope?
Absolutely. What do you mean by are you still within the disclosure statement? Meaning that you can't treat disease? Is that what you mean?
I think I'll wait for her to clarify.
Okay, so I'm going to say something while we're waiting to clarify, and then you can interrupt me, Shruti.
Sure.
So in terms of, here's how you recommend herbs. First of all, you don't prescribe them, you recommend them. Secondly, you have to use Ayurvedic tools to diagnose. A person comes, they have to give you their history. So they will say, I have asthma, okay? And then in one of your questions, you say, were you diagnosed by a medical person? Because, you'll be surprised if you don't ask that question, how many people are self-diagnosed. So you say, who are you under the care of a physician? And what treatment have you gotten so far? You do all of that. You have to verbally also tell them, even though they've signed it, you realize that I'm looking at your wellness and I don't treat disease. And you tell them very honestly. Then you Ayurvedically diagnose them. What is your fire like? So this person, my diagnosis is that this person has a low fire, and the Mamsa Vahashrota is affected. They have Vata in the Mamsa Vahashrota. They have Vata in the Manovahashrota, or their Sadhaka Pitta is affected. And I'm going to pacify Pitta in the Manovahashrota, whatever it is. You see what I'm doing? And for that, I'm going to recommend these herbs. You are never, ever, ever, no wink, wink, you are never treating asthma. You are treating their wellness and pacifying their dosha, building their dhatus, building their agni, and reducing their ama. Period. Okay.
Right. So Deepa clarifies that you already answered her question.
Okay.
So
all right.
okay, good. Yeah.
Good.
All right. So I think this brings us to the end of the session today. There is a lot of interest in a follow-up Jyotish session. So
Okay.
Mamtaji, I'll reach out to you and try to see if we can coordinate something.
Yes, we can do that. I want to say that Another hat that I wear is I have an organic blueberry farm, and we're going to go headlong into that season for the next 2 months. But I could probably take an hour, hour and a half and do Jyotish, whenever you have a free slot, Shruti. So you and
Sure.
I can be in touch and we can do that. Okay?
Wonderful.
Thank you
Wonderful.
so much, all of you. So nice.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining
Thanks,
us
Steph.
today, everyone. And Mamta ji for taking the time today.
You're
Thank
most
you, everyone.
welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye. I'll
Bye,
stop the
everyone.
share.
Bye.